This story began in Jiangxi province in the city of Jinyang. In the medical clinics the voice of a doctor was heard who received the elder. The doctor touched the elder's head with 2 fingers and said that his tumor had grown in his head. Dr. Suk was very worried about the elder and asked how he was feeling and did he have a headache today. The man replied that the headache had only gotten worse, but he thought he could still stand it. The old man took a cup of tea and drank the hot tea. After that, he asked the doctor to just be honest with him and tell him everything as it really is and not deceive him. The old man was very upset because his tumor was growing and he asked the doctor how long he had left to live. Suk was very afraid to tell him about this, but still decided to be honest with him and said that now his internal chi energy is protecting his blood vessels, but soon he will lose his mind from unbearable pain. The doctor told him that soon he would not be able to wake up all day because of this pain. The man immediately finished his tea and put the cup on the table. The elder left the hospital and before saying goodbye to the doctor, he said that he no longer needed to return for treatment. He thanked Dr. Suk for everything she did for him. He turned around and started to leave, but before he left, he turned his head towards the doctor and said that while he was still alive, the doctor should come to his Lu family in his free time. Suk looked at the elder and could not believe that this magnificent man would soon pass away and he was surprised that this old man would so bravely accept the news that he did not have long to live. Elder Lu Jinshan began to slowly walk away into the distance and waved his hand to the doctor to say goodbye to him. The doctor bowed to the elder and asked him to take care of himself and be careful with his health. The old man simply silently began to walk away into the distance. It was a wonderful time of year because at that moment the cherry leaves began to fall. Elder Lu watched the leaves fall from this beautiful tree and said that he needed to start understanding everything right now. He remembered himself when he was still young, handsome and strong. The old man thought that all that he had built in his entire life was his Lu family, which he loved very much. He remembered the boys who were trained in martial arts and he remembered all these wonderful moments as he spent time with them together. Lu's precious family was the meaning of his life and he loved every moment spent with them. His son and his grandchildren were the people whom he loved more than anything in the world because they were his continuation and he did not regret anything. However, he was very upset that he would never be able to see his youngest granddaughter Seol grow up. He knew that she was a special child born with an immortal healthy body constitution. He was always sure that Seol was a talented child who would definitely bring glory to his family when he grew up. Elder Lu walked to the gates of his palace and waited until they opened immediately. The gate opened very slowly and red fog and bright white light began to appear from it. Lu immediately suspected that something very strange was happening here, but so far he did not understand what exactly happened here. Suddenly he felt a very disgusting strange smell and realized that it was the smell of blood. His face immediately wrinkled and he felt very disgusted by this smell. While he was not in the palace, something terrible happened here and while the patriarch was leaving for a while, he was not around, some kind of disaster immediately happened and he knew it. Lu saw a large crowd and began to run through this crowd, ordering everyone to move away and make way for him. When he was able to break through this whole crowd and came to the crime scene, he saw something very terrible. The corpses of killed soldiers lay on the earth and he immediately realized that some kind of battle had taken place here and many people had died during this battle. He looked around and tried to understand what happened here. He wanted to study everything and analyze, but all he saw were only the corpses of people, among whom were women and children. I understood that the people who did this were real monsters. He walked near all these corpses and looked at their faces. He recognized his friends among these corpses and understood that these people had died. But he didn't know what happened here. He saw his daughter-in-law among the corpses and could not believe that she was also dead. He asked her to open her eyes, but she was already dead. He begged her to wake up again, but it was useless. Lu turned pale and realized that he felt very bad because his heart hurt a lot when he looked at his dead relatives and he decided to sit closer to them. He understood that they were all dead. He filmed what kind of crazy monster could do such evil and kill these beautiful people. Lu began to cry and tears flowed down his face and he screamed that he had lost everything that he loved so much. People communicated with each other and they were all at a loss because they did not know who could commit such evil. After all, the Lu family never had enemies. The elder took a knife and wanted to cut his throat and commit suicide. But people asked him to stop and asked the elder not to kill himself. People ran to the elder to stop him. They shouted that if he kills himself now, then no one will be able to take revenge on these scum for his family. Lu thought about revenge, but he understood that he would not be able to adequately take revenge on these monsters because he now has a very sick and old body, but the most important thing was that the problem was that he did not know who killed his family. Lu thought that he could no longer take revenge and it would be much better for him if he took his soul right now and joined his family. But suddenly he stopped because he heard a child's cry. It was the voice of a child who was still somewhere nearby. The elder immediately threw his knife to the ground and ran to look for the child. He found a large barrel that stood not far from him, and from this barrel the cry of a child could be heard. He opened the lid of this barrel and looked at what was inside it. When Lu looked inside this barrel, he saw a child crying and immediately realized that it was his granddaughter who was still alive. It was Seol, his little granddaughter, and the elder immediately began to sob because he could not believe that any of his family members were still alive. He took her in his arms and began to hug her. He was incredibly happy when he found out that his little granddaughter was alive. He immediately ran inside the building with his granddaughter, and at that moment he thought that it was all the work of those monsters who wanted to destroy his family, and he understood that these monsters would return when they found out that his granddaughter was still alive. People began to shout joyfully that the youngest granddaughter was alive and assumed that the daughter-in-law had hidden this little girl before her death. A few minutes later the elder left the building and was very serious. He went to the podium from which he usually addresses people and asked the people who were now present here to help him bury his family in this city, but he said that he wanted to bury them with his own hands. He shouted very loudly that in front of all the witnesses who are now here, he wants to swear to heaven. He said that he will not rest until they paint this divine fire dragon spear that belongs to his family in the red color of the blood of these scoundrels who killed his family. He could never forgive the people who killed his sons, his daughter-in-law and his grandchildren for this act. He bit his lip with his teeth so hard that blood began to flow down his face, and he said that the truth is on his side, so he is not afraid of these scumbags. The old man moved very quickly through the forest and jumped from one point to another in a very short time. It seemed that this old man could move faster than many young people. He was thinking that several decades had already passed since he last used the art of fast travel. It was very difficult for him to use such martial art techniques because his body was already very old and weak. But he still continued to use these combat techniques in order to move quickly. He understood that survival now comes first for him and he must overcome his pain in order to protect his granddaughter. Suddenly, a sharp blade of a blade appeared in front of his face, which was already very close to his face and could have injured him. An unknown ninja appeared out of nowhere and wanted to attack the old man, but the elder managed to dodge this blow and did not receive damage. Lu himself was surprised that he still had such a good reaction and was able to dodge this blow using his reflexes developed in his youth. The ninja used the dagger that was built into his boot to strike again. Lu was able to dodge this blow again. While flying, he thought that it was an ambush and he was attacked for a reason. He saw that the ninja who attacked him was moving very quickly, but his movements were very simple. Lu understood that he still had a very long way to go and he could not spend much time on this ninja, so he had to quickly take care of him and kill him. After Lu struck, he immediately disappeared somewhere. Ninja stood in a defensive stance expecting that he would now receive a strong blow, but nothing happened and he did not understand what happened. Suddenly the ninja saw that this old man was now lying on the ground and holding his hand behind his back. Lu heard the sound of his back crunching and realized that his body was already too old and could no longer perform martial arts skills. He was very upset because he was very old and could not fight normally. Because if he was now 10 years younger, this one would not have forgotten me already dead, but he understood that the safety of his granddaughter is now a priority. Lu got up from the ground and began to run very quickly. He understood that the situation could get even worse if the companions of this ninja came here now. The assassin saw that this old man was now going to run away from him and realized that he needed to catch up with him and he could not miss this old man. Lu felt that this ninja was catching up with him and therefore constantly asked his body to move a little faster in order to break away from this ninja. Lu turned his head and turned to this bastard. He said that if this killer still has a drop of compassion, then he should just leave them alone and the murder of an old man and a newborn child will be on his conscience. The old man understood that this ninja was unlikely to listen to his words and began to run even faster in order to break away from him suddenly. He saw that a sharp blade flew past him. Lu was angry that this brute killer kept attacking them. He realized that now it is not profitable for him to continue to run away because in this state he will lose anyway and he has only one option left. Lu watched this killer as he approached him and realized that his only choice was to kill this ninja with one blow. The old man raised his spear and was preparing to strike. He understood that he only had one chance. The ninja saw that the old man was about to attack him and realized that he needed to dodge this attack. The old man swung his spear, looking for the right moment to throw it at the enemy, but at that moment the ninja jumped into the air. Lu understood his enemy's tactics and was able to find his body in the air. Now all he had to do was throw his spear at the enemy. The ninja was flying from top to bottom and wanted to strike this old man from the air. Suddenly, the assassin released his two sharp knives from his hands and saw a bright light. Lu began to make his combination of gifts, which was called the family spear technique, and after that he released his spear from his hands and threw it at the enemy. The spear hit the enemy's body directly and pierced him through. This hit was called the desire for extreme speed. Lu threw his spear so hard that he was able to throw the ninja back and chain him to a tree. He had spent a lot of energy on this military equipment, and all this time his granddaughter was sitting in the bag behind her, watching everything in fear. Lu slowly began to approach the ninja who was hanging on the tree in order to take his spear back. The old man hit this ninja on the cheek with his palm and said that he warned the ninja that if he followed him then he would be lucky. Lu took off this killer's mask and looked closely at his face. The old man understood that his expectations were justified because he did not recognize the face of this person. He needed to find out who was behind him, but Lu understood that monsters like this guy would choose suicide instead of answering questions. He saw a black dragon tattoo on his body and realized that this was the only thing he could get from this guy, but he had never seen such tattoos before and for him it was an unusual tattoo. He suddenly heard his granddaughter start crying and immediately turned his head towards her. He said that little Seol was most likely very surprised by everything that was happening here, but he asked her not to be afraid because he would protect her. He looked at his granddaughter with very kind eyes and said that her grandfather would definitely protect her and would not let anyone offend her. Seol smiled and started laughing. She really loved it when a girl looked at her with a kind look and talked to her. Night came and they decided to make a short break in the mountains to rest and spend the night here to gain strength for the next day. Lu collected firewood in the area and made a fire, after which he began to cook food on this fire in the iron kazan, while the granddaughter carefully watched her grandfather. Grandfather stirred the soup with his stick and said that the child must probably be hungry, but if she waits a little then she will have a tasty meal. He thought that when he left, in a hurry, he took some cow's milk and household goods from the nearest village and who would have thought that he would steal and do something that he had never done in his life. When he prepared the soup there, he immediately poured it into a plate and told his granddaughter that the food was ready and she could safely eat this soup because her grandfather cooked it himself and it was safe to drink. The grandfather watched his granddaughter eat and praised her for eating very well. Seol finished a whole bowl of soup and started licking her lips. She was very happy and cheerful after eating. Lu patted the girl on the head and said that nothing bad would happen to her because he would protect her. He looked at how happy she was and said that this was the happiest child he had ever seen. Suddenly his head started to burn and he felt a lot of pain. Lu dropped the bowl of soup on the ground. He understood that this headache was associated with a tumor in his head, but he had never before felt such severe pain as now. He grabbed his head with both hands or screamed very loudly in pain because he wanted to stop her but didn't know how to do it. Lu remembered how the doctor told him that he would soon lose his mind from unbearable pain and after that he would never be able to wake up again. He grabbed his head with his hands or screamed loudly in pain. The girl did not understand what was happening to her grandfather and also began to cry. The old man remembered that the doctor gave him some kind of package and said that this thing could help if they had a very bad headache. Lu then asked the doctor why this item should work in medicine can no longer save him. The doctor said that this is not a medicine, it is a poison which is called a nerve suppressant pill and if you use this poison to fight the poison, then I from this nerve suppressant pill will suppress his swelling and continue his life for a while. The doctor said that this pill can only be used in case of emergency and therefore it is better for him to always carry it with him. Lu understood that he was already beginning to lose his mind and go crazy because of this pain and tried to find this cure. He knew that this poison is a drug that is used to torture prisoners. The poison causes them extreme pain but does not kill them, and even strong material will feel pain as if his entire body is being destroyed. But he understood that if he didn't suppress this tumor using poison right now, he would simply die right here and now. Lu fell to the ground and began to hold his head with his hands. The pain only intensified and he felt that there was practically no time left and he would soon lose consciousness. He took a poison pill and started putting it in his mouth because he couldn't die and couldn't leave his granddaughter Seol alone. He put the pill in his mouth and swallowed it. When the poison pill entered his body, he began to feel strange sensations. His face turned blue and he told himself that it was just chi poison. He grabbed the ground with his hand and began to scrape the dirt with his fingers. His eyes began to become bloodshot and his veins began to appear on his body. He felt very strong pain and it began to appear on his face. He understood that he was different, but she did not become smaller. His face was blue and his whole skin turned blue. He screamed very loudly but the pain still continued. The forest that was in front of his eyes began to blur and he saw a very fuzzy picture. When he opened his eyes, the first thing he thought was that a lot of time had probably passed since he lost consciousness. He lay on the ground and thought that fortunately the poison had subsided and now he was not in as much pain as it was before. He couldn't believe that the pain had passed and it no longer bothered him, and the most important thing was that he was able to open his eyes and wake up again. He didn't know when his headache would come back and bother him. He could use poison to suppress his tumor. But these pills could still run out someday. They couldn't be used forever. The only thing he knew for sure was that he had to stay alive until he could ensure the safety of his granddaughter Seol. He knew that there was only one way to survive, to have a good body that could cure the tumor and protect his granddaughter from danger. He had to reconstruct his body in order to improve it. He had to do the reconstruction of the bones and flesh in the body to create a better body suitable for martial arts. However, he understood that in order to clear the closed chakras so that the reconstruction of his body would be more effective, only 180 years of practicing the internal energy of Qi would be necessary. At the moment, his internal Qi energy was about 150 years of practice and he didn't understand. Can he hold out with this body for some more time? He learned that such training to improve his body can take years or even decades. Until yesterday, he didn't even think about the fact that he wants to continue his life and do such things, but now he has no other choice and his mind is occupied with only one task. He was Seol's grandfather and the only person who could protect her and take care of her. After all, she had no other relatives. The old man understood that he did not have the opportunity to be weak or old and he must spend all his strength on protecting her and making a good life for her. He stood in a large field near a river and looked at the big mountains that he had to overcome on his way and promised himself that he would not die until he did everything possible for this girl. By nightfall they were able to reach a small settlement. Lu slowly walked towards the village and thought that for the last few days he had been eating only tasteless leftovers because he had no more provisions. He straightened his straw hat and thought that fortunately they were still lucky to find a small village. Lu talked to his granddaughter and told her that she must be very hungry now. If she waits a little longer then he will be able to feed her because they have already arrived in the village. Lu suddenly felt a very strange sensation, as if his intuition was telling him that something bad was about to happen. He smelled blood again, but this time the smell was pleasant. Near one of the houses that was located in this village in Big Kazan, men were cooking several chickens. People talked about how even a beggar has sunny days and finally today each of them had a whole chicken and they were very glad that they could eat well today. People heard the voice of a man approaching them and saying that he smelled a very pleasant smell here and this stranger alerted the man. The beggar asked this stranger who he was and what he was doing here. Lu walked up to these men, took off his straw hat and said that he was just an ordinary hungry traveler who would like to have a little snack. He noticed the appearance of these men and immediately made his assumption that these people were most likely members of a sect of beggars. He looked at their clothes and saw the knots around their belts and immediately realized that one of them was a first-rank disciple and the other two men were second-rank disciples. He decided to take advantage of this and realized that it was possible to get from them not only food, but also some information. Lu asked these men if they could share a bowl of this delicious food with the old man. The beggar answered the old man that he could not believe that he had lived to see the day when such a noble man would ask him for food from the beggars. One guy shouted that taking food from the poor is unfair. Well, they immediately closed his mouth, and the second man invited the old man to join because their sects are not stingy and they can share food. The old man thanked these kind people and said that, as always, the Sectanishevs are a very reliable and kind sect. The beggar scratched his head and said that he forgot the salt. They suddenly began to run behind the wall of the house and asked the old man to wait for them near the fire. He told them that they could take their time. He looked at this fire and was very happy because he understood that now he could finally eat normal food. The beggars were standing near the fence, and one of the guys said that this old man was undoubtedly Lu Jinshan of the Seven Lu. He knew it by the clothes and the child on his back. He suggested to his comrades to catch this old man. But the only thing that stopped his friends was that there were rumors that this old man was an expert in martial arts. But the guy said that they don't have to worry about it because with just one look he can tell that this old man is just a bag of bones now, and he assured his friends that the old man doesn't have enough strength to swing a weapon now. He picked up a bamboo club and said that they should attack this old man as soon as he gave them a signal. Suddenly they came around the corner and the man said that he had already put salt in the soup and forgot about it, and now there was just something wrong with his head. But suddenly the expression on this guy's face changed when he saw the old man standing in front of him. Lu stood near the cauldron with food and said that this food had a very incredible taste. Did he ask them to succeed, or did they agree on something around the corner? He poured the broth into a plate and gave it to his granddaughter so that she could also enjoy this incredibly tasty and amazing food. The old man asked these guys why they were going to attack him and was it related to the monsters that killed his family. The beggar was shocked that this old man heard their conversation behind the wall. He was amazed because this old man had such good hearing. Their leader immediately ordered his boys to attack this old man and kill him. They took their bamboo sticks and ran towards him to attack the old man. The first guy who ran up to the old man to hit him shouted that grandfather should treat this as a premature trip to hell. Lu was very calm at that moment. He took the spoon in his hand and slowly raised it up. He was very confident in his abilities and therefore was able to hit the bamboo stick with his small spoon. The beggar was not prepared for the fact that this old man was so strong, and he broke his arm the moment his bamboo stick came into contact with a small spoon. The second man wanted to hit him from the back, and before hitting him he shouted that he was pissed off about this damn old man. But suddenly he stopped in place and didn't even have time to strike. Something happened that he clearly didn't expect. Lu threw his small spoon directly at this aggressive man's forehead and he fell to the ground. At that moment, a third man pounced on him from above and wanted to strike him on the head and kill the old man with this blow. Lu wiped his mustache with the remains of the soup that remained there and then raised his hand up. He protected himself with his hand, and when the bamboo stick came into contact with his hand it simply broke in half. He grabbed this guy by the throat with his hand and lifted him into the air. He asked why they just attacked him, and asked if the beggars had somehow ordered them to do this. He wanted to know if the sect of beggars were also people who had something to do with ordering an attack on his family. Lu said that it makes no difference to him whether the beggar sect did it or someone else, it doesn't matter to him at all. He said that if this man doesn't tell him now about who did it, he will tear him apart here and kill him. The man who was behind at that moment said that he did not know who did it and they were not related to the culprits who attacked the Lu family. He said they were just following orders from the alliance. Lu asked about what specific alliance is this beggar talking about now. And he asked to tell everything about the order that the alliance gave them. The beggar didn't want to tell anything and just started crying and complaining that his arm was broken. He asked this old man to look at his broken arm and let them go. They gave him a piece of paper on which it was written that Patriarch Lu Jinshan is wanted as a murderer who killed innocent people. Because of him the alliance is dying. He couldn't believe his eyes because everything that was written in this piece of paper was not true, and he didn't understand why the Murim alliance wanted to hunt him. He crumpled up a sheet with information about his search and said that he didn't understand how they could write such nonsense. In order to find out the full story of what happened to this old man, you just need to ask the residents of Jinyang County. However, he could not ignore the fact that an order was issued to search for complex information. This means that the Murim alliance may be connected to the murder incident of his family. He understood that someone holding a high position in the Murino alliance was pulling the strings and making this mechanism move. This man ordered his family to be killed. Lu started running every morning to get back into shape. He filled his day with a lot of training every day and improved his body to become stronger. Now he realized that his enemy could be the Roman alliance itself and he had to prepare himself to fight them. He trained and did not stop for a second. He thought that he would have to devote at least 5 years to the reconstruction of his body. Lu walked up to a large stone and put his palm on it. He stood near a giant stone and wanted to do a workout that would help break such a big stone. His knees and joints hurt very much when he loaded himself with heavy training, but he understood that he had to endure this pain. He thought only that if it became clear to him that the Murim alliance was behind the destruction of his family, he will destroy them just like he is now going to destroy this giant block of stone. He activated all his abilities that were inside his body and used the energy to destroy this stone. He knew only one thing, that he needed to use his powers 1,000,000 times more and maybe even 10,000,000 times more than now. Lu began to release a huge amount of energy from his body and felt that the stone began to crack when he touched it with his hand. He began to squeeze this stone and the structure of the stone immediately began to break. His strength was enough to break this giant block. However, there was still one question in his head that haunted him. He did not understand why the Roman alliance of Orthodox sections defends righteousness but still commits such terrible acts. Lu heard his granddaughter begin to cry and he immediately turned his attention to her. He asked Seol if she was hungry. He said that he gave her a whole cup of milk but for some reason she didn't want to drink it and he didn't understand why. She decided to play around a little and threw away the cup of milk, but he managed to run up in time and grab it. Lu tried to explain to his granddaughter that she almost spilled this milk of which they have very little and she needs to drink it in order to grow well and be healthy. She did not want to drink this milk and threw it away with her hand. The old man immediately realized that this girl had a character like her father. He thought that the girls needed to eat anyway and suggested that she eat some fried rabbit meat. Seol was very happy when she saw the delicious meat. She smelled it and immediately became happy and saliva flowed from her mouth. Lu, ask your granddaughter how she's going to eat this meat, because she doesn't have enough teeth to chew it. He asked his granddaughter to say the word grandfather if she was hungry. She really wanted to eat and therefore tried to repeat after her grandfather and name this word. He was delighted when he heard the first part of the word grandfather. He could not believe that she was actually able to repeat this word. Suddenly the girl finally finished the last part of the word and managed to call the old man grandfather. He was delighted because she could already speak and he understood that she was growing at an incredible speed. He was very happy because this girl had an immortal body design that gave her a difference from other children. Lu smiled and said that this is truly an amazing child and he is very glad that this is his granddaughter. When she managed to say the word grandfather, she constantly repeated it and tried to say that she was hungry. He said that he couldn't give her meat and so he went to look for ingredients to cook porridge for her. Evening came and by this time they were able to get to a small town where they could find some food. Lu didn't know how common his wanted poster was in cities, so he decided to be careful not to get caught by other bounty hunters. He thought that now was a very good time because an ordinary woman was passing by him and was carrying something in her hands. He called this girl and apologized for distracting her, but he just needed to talk to her for a minute. He asked if it was possible to ask this girl for some food or porridge to feed the child. He said that she had not been eating properly for several days. The girl tilted her head towards this little girl and said that for such a cute child she always has some food. She said that she had some breast milk and could feed this little girl. Lu was very happy when he heard this. The girl said that for such a small child it is necessary to feed on breast milk in order to grow better. Lu thanked this sweet woman for her kindness. She politely asked him to turn aside while she fed this girl so that he would not watch her naked breasts. Lu said that he couldn't believe that he met such a noble person like this girl at such a late time on the outskirts of the village. He said that his granddaughter couldn't even finish her mother's milk. He said that he was in a bad mood for stealing cow's milk to feed her and was grateful that this girl came to their aid. He asked is it okay for her to eat other people's breast milk. He didn't understand why this girl wasn't answering him and asked her again, but he never got an answer. But instead, he heard women's steps moving away from him. He turned his head towards her and saw that this girl was running away. He said that this was madness and did not understand what the hell she was doing. She stole the child and began to run away with him. She shouted that now she will finally become rich right now. But suddenly she received a blow to her back with a heavy object and fell. Lu managed to catch up with this girl and neutralize her. He was even able to take his granddaughter from the hands of this girl. Lu took his granddaughter, who thought it was all a fun game, and after that, with his spear, he caught the clothes of the fleeing girl. He said that he couldn't believe that this woman turned out to be so crazy and asked why she was doing this. Suddenly he turned his head to the side and saw something very strange. To his right was a notice board on which hung 2 portraits of wanted people. There he and his granddaughter were. He was very surprised when he saw that in such a small town there was a poster saying that he was wanted. The poster said that Lu Jinshan is a crazy old man who kidnapped a little girl and carried her on his back. It was written there that whoever saves and brings a child to the Murim Alliance will receive a big reward. He was shocked when he saw this terrible inscription. He could not believe that these monsters treated him so cruelly. He immediately began to be afraid of all the people who were near him and constantly looked around so as not to attract unnecessary attention to himself. Now he had to always be on guard because even ordinary people were following him and their wanted posters could be placed throughout the province, so everyone was looking for him. 3 men approached the notice board and talked about how these 2 old men and girls were wanted everywhere. One guy went to the notice board and said that he heard that the Lu family was a very prestigious family and such an old man should have calmly, but he chose to become crazy and steal the girl. Lu thought that all his life he valued honor more than anything else, and he could not believe that the world would be so cruel and would be looking for him as a murderer and a demon who kidnapped a child. One guy said that he heard that the family of the great Bayuks in a neighboring village was also recently attacked and their whole family was killed at night. Lu heard the dialogue between these guys and couldn't believe his ears. The Book family was even bigger than his family and they had many first-class martial artists in their family. He couldn't understand how they could be killed. The guy who stood near the notice board said that after their family was killed they could not find a single corpse of a baby. Lu realized that this was not a coincidence and that the same people attacked these 2 families. He said that his opponent is very serious because not any person can destroy such a large family in one night, and he realized that this is actually the work of the Murim Alliance. But he didn't understand why they did this. Suddenly Seol started saying the word grandpa loudly and trying to hug him. He remembered that when Seol was born, people made a lot of noise and rumors spread that she was born with an immortal sound and a body constitution. Most likely the Murima Alliance is hunting for her to take away her chi. People said that it was a happy occasion for all of Jianghu that Seol was born with such a body structure that the greatest expert in history admired her. The man held a book in his hand and smiled. Lu understood that the Murima Alliance was well aware of the existence of Seol. In the end, the goal of these monsters was achieved and they killed all the members of his family but were never able to take the girl. He got angry because of this damned garbage he is now in very big problems. He understood that he could fall into a state of shutdown of chi energy and become insane. The bandits saw this old man and said that he could not go far because he was already old and was carrying a child with him. They told this old man that he would make a mistake when he allowed them to survive, and so they brought the best killer in the entire area here to deal with the old man. The killer said that he would be the person who would bring these 2 wanted men into the Murim Alliance. Lu said that he doesn't care at all anymore. I can't do whatever they want. The killer said that today is a very good night for him and he cannot believe that he has a chance to make a name for himself so easily. But suddenly this old man disappeared somewhere and he didn't understand what happened. Was this old man able to deceive them? The killer and the bandits did not understand where this old man had gone and how he was able to move so quickly. Lu was very angry at these guys and said that he would kill them because rage began to awaken in him and he began to lose his mind. They were very scared when they saw that behind them the voice of this old man was now heard, and this voice sounded very scary. They began to discuss among themselves that they had definitely heard some strange voice, but they could not understand where this voice came from. At that moment, Lu jumped from roof to roof and moved very quickly, as if some closed chakra had been activated and endowed him with energy. He felt very strong surges of anger and understood that he would not be able to restrain it for long because he had almost fallen into a state of chi shutdown. And it was a very stupid situation. He thought that if he saw blood at that moment, this means that he would become insane and would justify the legend that the Miram Alliance tells about him. At this moment, his granddaughter, who was on his back, constantly repeated the word grandfather. He turned his head towards her and asked his granddaughter not to worry because he would not allow anyone to offend her and would not allow himself to lose consciousness again and repeat this mistake. Lu said that Seol is actually a lot of luck and happiness that exists in this world. Lu said that this little son did everything to save her grandfather and now he must save her. Lu moved very quickly across the rooftops and was very difficult to catch up with. After he found out that the whole world was hunting him and his beautiful granddaughter, he needed to go and find a safe place where no one could find them. They traveled through the forest and walked for so long that the straw hats began to head for the day and fell asleep. Lu walked for a very long time and he was already starting to get tired of constant travel. He felt that he would need to take a break but did not know when it would be better to do this. Since that moment, 2 whole months have already passed and all this time they have been traveling in search of a safe place. He pushed aside the branches with his spear and saw something amazing. He woke up his granddaughter and asked if she saw the same thing as him. Seol slowly opened her eyes and gradually began to wake up. She wanted to look at what grandfather was looking at now. Lu shouted that he had finally found him and he was very glad that after such a long journey he finally managed to come to the right place. He started laughing and said that this house was no different from the palace in which they lived before. He was happy because he saw that there was even a well in their yard and said that they were very lucky. Lu slowly began to open the door to the house and look around the room to make sure it was safe. He saw a lot of cobweb dust in this place and said that no one had been here for a long time. And this place was empty but it still looks very clean. He went up to the chest and the table and said that the furniture in this building is still as good as it was before and it has not changed a bit. He took a small box and said that it was a precious jade box and he wondered if there were accessories inside this box that could be sold. Inside the jade boxes were flying needles and when he looked at them, he thought that some expert on internal chi energy used to live here. He saw that a musical instrument called a 7-string zither was hanging on the wall and he was shocked that the previous owner of this house was a very interesting person and he had such a strange choice of things and activities. He said that he thought that the person who lived here was an unusual person and was clearly doing something interesting. When evening came, I immediately turned on the lights in the house and began to arrange this space so that I could live here. Lu entered the house with a table in his hands on which there was a bowl of food and told his granddaughter that food was already ready for her and praised the little girl for being able to wait well. He scooped food into a spoon and tried to feed his granddaughter, and at that moment she was trying to say a new word. She ate the first spoonful of food and immediately began to smile and her grandfather praised her for eating very well. Lu noticed that his granddaughter eats exactly the same as his youngest son when he was still very young. He thought that after a lifetime of practicing martial arts, he was now raising a child and finally he began to understand his daughter-in-law. He said that he needed to support them when they were together because he understood that he was responsible for them and had to protect them. He couldn't believe that everything would change so quickly and he would lose his chance to talk to them one last time. Seol happily looked at her grandfather and smiled. She was a ray of hope that made him live and move on. Lu fed his granddaughter the food he had prepared and cried. Every time he looked at her, he understood that this innocent child now had to live in such conditions because some idiots wanted to hunt her. He began to wipe away his tears and said that he was not crying, but smoke got into his eyes while he was cooking. But the granddaughter reached out to him with her hands and wanted to hug her grandfather. He said that he forgot to turn off the stove and therefore he needed to go outside and asked his granddaughter to sit in the room because he would be back soon. She looked at her grandfather in surprise because she didn't understand what was happening to him and why he was behaving so strangely. He was offended by himself for showing his granddaughter such a weak side of himself and he didn't want her to see him so pathetic. He looked at the sky and asked him, will he really have to wander around the world for so long in search of peace for himself and his granddaughter? He couldn't believe that this was all happening to him. He thought that when he found out that the Miram Alliance was looking for him, he wanted to destroy them all so that they would stop hunting him and creating a threat to him and his granddaughter. But he thought that revenge could wait. Because now the most important thing for him is to raise his granddaughter so that she is happy and healthy. He went outside and saw that the wheat fields in the yard were very fruitful and the well was also located near this field and it was very convenient. He started working in the field using tools and said that this is an ideal place to grow vegetables. He worked with a rake in the garden and constantly talked about how he would plant a lot of vegetables so that Seol could eat them. He had been working in the garden since the morning and improving the field so that vegetables could be grown on it, and suddenly he raised his hands up. Lu felt very severe pain in his back and began to scream very loudly in pain. The girl heard her grandfather screaming very loudly and immediately began repeating the words after him. She stood next to her grandfather and repeated after him all the words that he said or shouted in this way. She learned to talk. But Lu was very surprised when he saw that his granddaughter, for the first time in her entire life, was standing on her own and not crawling. He sat down and invited his granddaughter to approach him with her feet. He persuaded her to take her first steps. Seol slowly began to take her first step towards her grandfather, but suddenly she tripped over a stone that was lying on the ground and began to fall. Lu managed to catch his granddaughter and didn't let her fall. He said that this is an amazing child. And he can't believe that she has already started walking and talking at such a young age, because she is very small. He took this baby in his arms and smiled at her. After that she smiled at him. He said that the baby probably wants to play with her grandfather, and she was immediately happy when she heard that they were going to play now. Grandfather put his straw hat on her head and took her hand, after which he helped her take her first steps on the earth and explained to her how to walk correctly. Night fell and there were a lot of different stars in the sky that were hiding under gray clouds. Lu spent the whole evening thinking that his granddaughter really took her first steps today, and most likely she was tired. That's why she's sleeping so soundly, and her sleeping face is no different from an angel. He thought that while she was sleeping he needed to go hunting in order to feed her meat tomorrow because her body was growing and she needed to eat a lot. He very quickly began to move through the forest in search of prey in order to feed himself and his beautiful granddaughter tomorrow. Lu thought that in the dark his senses are enhanced and he better senses the wild animals that roam this forest, and now he can calmly use the art of body lighting to find these animals. He began to run very quickly through the forest and look for his prey. He had to find at least some traces that would lead him to the animal. Lu found a tree in the forest on which there were claw marks of some large animal, and he thought that there must be a large elk nearby, and if he does not stop this elk then this animal will destroy his garden. He decided to follow its territorial markings and try to catch this large animal, and while he could smell it, he followed its trail. But suddenly he turned his head to the side and noticed something very strange. It was something that attracted his attention and made the old man stop. He was surprised that he saw people here. He didn't understand where they came from, because besides him and his granddaughter, there shouldn't be anyone here, because this place is deep in the mountains. The man told the two guys who were standing in front of him that they were late and asked what was happening to their faces now. He was trying to find out if these guys received the tax of people exporting. Lu understood from their dialogue that these were unusual people and these were bandits, and apparently this mountain was the refuge of these bandits. He asked these guys when other people came here. The guys told their leader that these people who came here were support from the Wudang sect and they were guarded by two Taoists who were constantly next to them. He said that because of these people, most likely his brothers were killed by these idiots, and the younger one replied that it was so. They said that they also managed to kill one of the Taoist idiots, and he heard that this guy was a second-generation sect disciple. The main bandit asked what happened to the second guard. The guy answered him that when their assistants arrived, he ran away with his tail between his legs and was scared because he understood that they could kill him. The leader of the bandits started yelling at this guy for acting like a coward and said that this guy should have killed both of them. They ran away to the cowardly girl. Lu listened to these bandits arguing among themselves and thought that they were right. After all, they should kill them both and destroy the evidence. He understands that since they mixed with the Wudang sect, in this case, a punitive squad will be formed against them, which will soon be here and arrange a bloodbath for them. Lu understood that the situation in this area was becoming very tense and problematic because this mountain was home to him and his granddaughter, and he needed to draw a line before they intervened here again. The main bandit heard some strange noise in the depths of the forest and turned his attention to this place, but when he turned his head there was no one there and he became curious about what happened there. He immediately grabbed the blade that hung on his belt with his hand and asked what kind of rat is now hiding in the forest and is afraid to show itself to them. Lu showed himself to these people and came out from behind the bushes. He said that this is not the way to talk to elders who are respected people, and calling an unknown person a rat can be very life-threatening. He put the spear on his shoulder and his hair fluttered very beautifully in the wind. He said that this bandit was not going to develop and would congratulate his new neighbor for settling here. The bandits started laughing when they saw this old man. They said that this is some crazy old man and they think that his children must have left him alone, that is why he is acting so strange here now. But suddenly the bandits were able to properly look at the body of this old man and realized that just one look is enough to say that this old man is crazy from the moment he appeared here, and he felt a very strange energy. The bandit turned to this old man and said that they own this mountain together with their gang, and therefore if he does not want to die, then he better get out of here as soon as possible and never show himself again. After all, if he angers them, they will change their attitude and I will drive myself very rudely with him. Lu began to laugh and said that this mountain has no owner, and he was very surprised that this mountain belongs to someone else besides nature itself. He suggested that these bandits go to his lair and inform their leader of the bandits that he now lives in this mountain. Suddenly his eyes turned red and his voice changed. His voice was like the voice of the devil, and he said that if they appear here again he will simply kill them and shed their blood, and therefore they better not even come near this place. The bandits got scared when they saw all the power and danger of this old man. They couldn't even believe that he was such a terrible person. The bandits very politely and humbly bowed to this unknown old man and said that they would immediately go to their lair and inform their boss that this elder now lives here. After that, they raised their heads, and the main bandit said that the old man most likely expected that they would react to his words exactly like that. Lu replied that he did not expect such a reaction because he knew that these bandits would not actually respond to his threats. The main bandit said that this crazy old man decided to joke with them and therefore ordered his henchmen to attack him immediately. The little robber jumped on the old man and decided to attack him with his dagger. He said that this crazy old man will die today in the nature that he loves so much. Lu didn't know what the right thing to do was to ensure that these bandits never came to this place again and forgot about its existence. He decided to show them the huge difference between his strength and the strength they possess. Therefore, they decided to demonstrate their talents and easily repel all their attacks. Lu showed these loser bandits that he could, with one snap of his finger, deflect a blow from this bandit's blade. The bandit was not ready for such a blocking of his blow and flew back. His sword immediately broke into several parts and he did not even have time to notice it. The main bandit also decided to join the battle and attack this old man. He made a quick jump towards the crazy grandfather and decided to attack him. He stabbed with his blade in the hope that he would be able to damage this old man and finish him off as quickly as possible. He landed on the ground and said that he was very sorry for this poor old man because he should have immediately listened to them when they suggested that he leave on good terms. At that moment, the main bandit heard the voice of an old man behind him and was shocked that it was his grandfather who was still alive after receiving heavy damage from the dagger. Lu raised his hand up and was preparing to deliver one very strong blow to his opponent. And at that moment he said that unfortunately these stupid bandits did not understand what he was trying to say. He hit his opponent with his palm directly in the back, and this strike is called a back lightning strike. After this strike the opponents receive very heavy damage. The bandit began to scream very loudly in pain because he did not expect that this grandfather would be so strong and was not prepared for the fact that he would receive such great damage. The main bandit began to sit on the ground and writhe in pain. He said that he was in great pain, but the old man said that this bandit was exaggerating and the blow was not so strong and could be survived. Suddenly the bandit actually realized that he was not in as much pain as he thought. And it was all this old man's tricks. He got angry at this crazy grandfather and started showing his teeth. He wanted to take revenge on him somehow. He picked up his sword from the ground again and started screaming very loudly that he wanted to kill this crazy old man for what he had just done to him. Suddenly a dent appeared in the tree trunk and the guys began to look at this dent in fear. They did not understand that it had just happened. The bandit also turned his head back and began to look at this dent in the tree. He was very scared and did not understand what else this old man was capable of. Lu used his fast-moving technique to scare his opponents. He didn't want to beat them up, but he wanted to show them his incredible strength so that they would finally understand that it was better not to mess with him. Suddenly the trees began to break and made a strange sound. Lu was able to immediately break 7 trees that were behind these bandits in a few seconds. When they turned their heads, they couldn't believe their eyes because it looked very strange. At this moment, the bandits understood that they were now being fought by a very serious enemy. and if they were still not dead, it meant that he simply did not want to kill them. Lu said that he just wanted to correct their manners and make them a little better and promised that he would let them go since this was their first meeting, but for now he asked them to get lost from here. But suddenly at that moment a very large and strong man appeared from the darkness of the forest. He looked very dangerous and had a very deep voice, and this man looked like a very large and dangerous bandit. He was missing one eye and had a very strong build. He approached the bandit and asked what was going on here. Lu said that this was the first time he had seen such a sophisticated and strange person as this big guy and was surprised that this big man had learned martial arts skills and was good at them. The big man didn't pay any attention to this old man and asked his henchmen why are they here now arguing with this old man and just won't shut his mouth. The thug realized that he would have to do everything with his own hands and immediately attacked this old man with his big axe and said that all they had to do was just split this grandfather's head. Lu was ready for the fact that this giant could suddenly attack him and therefore prepared for this. He was able to dodge the blow of his axe in time and slipped under him. Axe blade stuck in the ground. Lu immediately decided to counterattack this brute and gave him a very strong uppercut from below in order to knock this giant off balance and try to break his jaw. Lu spent a lot of his internal energy on this blow and made this giant fly into the air and fly back. The big man was not prepared for the fact that he would receive such heavy damage and flew into the air. Now even small bandits were shocked that this old man was so strong, even a giant could not protect them and cope with this crazy old man. When this big guy fell to the ground, the earth began to shake and a lot of dust appeared in the air. Lu said that this will happen to all the idiots who want to fight the old man and I will not listen to his requests. He repeated once again that he warned them that he could let them out of here alive if they just listened and got lost and would never show themselves to him again. They didn't understand what to do because they were very scared and their bodies simply froze in place and they didn't know what they now needed to do with all this. Lu shouted that this strange feeling was happening to him again. He didn't understand why this terrible feeling always appeared at such an inopportune moment. The bandits saw that the old man fell to the ground and began to hold his head. They did not know what was happening to him and why he suddenly began to behave strangely. Lu ate a poison pill because he understood that he could not suddenly collapse and die now because his granddaughter was now at home alone. The bandits carefully watched this old man and tried to understand what he had just put in his mouth and why he ate this strange pill. They assumed that this old man had just eaten a pill to suppress nerves. But this pill was poison and they did not understand why this old man had just decided to eat poison. They understood that this old man was now in a weak position and realized that now was the best moment to attack him, because then it would be too late. They started kicking him and trying to attack him from different sides because they were already very tired of this damned old man. They beat this old man with their feet and hands and shouted at him for daring to come to their mountain and imagining himself to be the new owner here. Lu at that moment was lying on the ground and covering his head with his hands. He felt very bad due to the effects of the poison. And in addition to this, he was beaten by bandits. They said that they would not allow him to die an easy death. Therefore, they decided to torture him first. He realized that he was beginning to lose consciousness and the last thing he saw before he closed his eyes was the foot of one of the bandits approaching him. He began to lose consciousness and close his eyes, but he tried to resist this state because he remembered that his granddaughter was now alone at home. He didn't know what would happen next and all he thought about was that his granddaughter could now be left without her grandfather and something very terrible could happen to her. After some time, he opened his eyes and saw some unfamiliar robber hitting another bandit on the cheek with his palm. This bandit didn't understand why he was beating him now. He thought that he did everything right and he thought that he was being treated unfairly now. But the unknown bandit continued to hit this guy on the cheek with his palm and said that he had never met such stupid idiots as this one before. Lu opened his eyes and watched the big bandit beat up the smaller bandit and he immediately realized that most likely this big bandit was their leader. Lu was tied with chains and chained to a pole, he could not move and could not move his body. But the most important thing for him was that he was still alive and did not understand how much time had passed since he lost consciousness. The first thing he thought about when he opened his eyes was that his granddaughter was now alone at home and he did not understand what was happening to her and how long it had been since he lost consciousness. The main bandit noticed that this was a crazy old man who was brought to their lair, had just woken up and immediately paid attention to him. They saw that he had regained consciousness. This meant that now they could talk to him. Lu looked carefully at the man who was now standing in front of him and immediately realized that this was the bandit leader. Because his behavior was the same as usual among bandit leaders. The leader said that his children were very rude to this elder and they did not know who to deal with. Lu didn't understand why he constantly finds himself in situations that are very difficult for him to get out of, and he didn't understand why he now had to face this bandit.